Hi, good evening, and welcome to the 8th recording of the Who's Your HackerCon webinar series, recorded May 28th, 2020. I am Scott Lyons, and I am joined by people that you may or may not know. Today, we've got two people that are going to be joining us. This is going to be a great presentation. Live from the USA, Brent White and Tim Roberts. They're going to be giving us a presentation on breaking into your building, a hacker's guide to unauthorized access. After, there will be some light Q&A. So join us as we try to figure out who's your hacker. Welcome to the Who's Your HackerCon webinar series. We are putting on weekly webinars. Today's episode is brought to you by Red Lion. Breaches happen. Red Lion is the only risk management company which is MRR and MSP friendly. Compliance and security connected, Red Lion. Visit redlion.io for more information. Man, I love it when this kind of stuff happens. Listen, a little upfront house cleaning. As a reminder, this webinar series, we're going to try to hold it every Thursday night, but we're going to see how that's going to hold up. Either way, we're going to do it until this pandemic crap nightmare that we're dealing with is over with. The link for the next episode can be found at who'syourhacker.com/webinars-free-CPES. Also, you can find this and other episodes on the Who's Your Hacker website, irongeek.com, and also on YouTube. Now, tonight I have the esteemed pleasure of introducing you to hackers that you may or may not know, Brent White and Tim Roberts. Guys, welcome to the webisode. Give us a little bit of background about who you are, what you're doing, what you're going to be talking about, and we'll go from there.
Sure. My name is Brent White, and Tim Roberts and I specialize in social engineering and covert physical intrusion. So if you have seen some of our talks, we discuss some of the tactics and techniques that we employ, as well as some of the tools and, war stories and other information like that.
Okay. Tim, a little bit about your background.
Yeah, this is Tim Roberts, Senior Security Consultant for NTT. Brent and I are part of a team called Threat Services, and we do offensive security testing. So anything from network to application to physical and social engineering.
Right. Now, you guys we originally had spoken about doing a presentation, right? And walking people through different types of techniques and so on and so forth. But you really wanted to turn it into a fireside chat. So obviously you have some killer stories that you want to talk about, right? I'm going to throw it to you guys and let you guys rock those stories, and we'll get into that. Okay? So
sure.
Who wants to go first?
Well, if I could kick it off with a quick statement. I know a lot of times, like through our website, wehackpeople.com, we get a lot of submissions through the contact form of people asking, how can they get into this job? Like, they'll make the comment, hey, I know someone, or I am really good at lying, basically, but I don't have any tech skills. How can I still do the job? And something I just want to address really quick is tech skills are definitely a requirement. Once you get into a building, if you aren't sure what to do when you plug into someone's network, then that's quite a bit of a learning curve there. So just wanted to kick it off with tech skills are required. You're not just walking into a building. So.
Okay.
Yeah, just to add on to what Brent was saying too, aside from being a generalist and you become a subject matter expert, it's taken Brent and I some time to just focus primarily on physical and social engineering engagements. That's what we do a lot of, but also with red teaming, you hear that industry term all the time. It's a little subjective in some arenas, but red teaming, a lot of times it is combined. So you're throwing all of those attack vectors, including wireless and those on-site attempts to social engineer and to bypass electronic or physical access controls. And then gain access to the network. So it's always good, like Brent was saying, to know everything, have a little bit of jack of all trades.
Right. And so we had earlier on in one of the earlier episodes, we had Jason Street come on, right? And Jason was saying APT should be advanced phishing techniques or advanced penetration techniques, right? What can you guys bring to the table as to like why people should be looking for this, how they should be looking for it, and so on and so forth?
So I think maybe from our perspective, if you're looking at APT, phishing, and things like that, we like to focus on things more of like the insider threat. You know, what do you do with someone that has gained access into the facility and now they're on your network? Prior to that, yeah, we can do phishing during the reconnaissance and reconnaissance phase, trying to figure out who's who, you know, what their environment looks like. So there's a lot of things that you can do with phishing and so on. Tim, you want to jump in on that one too?
Yeah, you know, even outside of the phishing, I think the advanced, threat modeling it's important to look at those real world risks. And I think a lot of companies get in the habit of doing checkbox security where they are, just doing an assessment based off of, some requirements, say they have some industry standards that they have to meet. So they decide to do a pen test. But I think, even going beyond what I usually think of with APT, like I think looking in depth with all those attack vectors, looking at, where your company stands outside of just, just doing a network pen test or something against your web application to see how the facility, stands and what's the security awareness of your people outside of receiving phishing emails and how are these emails being done? I know a lot of pen testers out there, they'll do their phishing. Are they coming from, the cloud, or how are they bypassing spam filters, things like that. So I think looking at those real world approaches and techniques are super important, even as a client when you're hiring pen testers.
Okay. So go ahead, Brent.
Yes. Sorry about that, Scott.
That's all right.
So with phishing, some of the things that we can do as well is with phishing, we can send a specially crafted email to someone and say, hey, just so you know, so-and-so from this company is going to be here tomorrow to look at a printer or whatever. Please let them in, open the door for them or whatever, give them a visitor badge or something. And so that's one of the ways that we can utilize that as well.
Okay, so is that like a preferred method, if you will?
It honestly, it just depends on the business. It depends on their environment already. Some places that might work. Other places you don't even need it. So it really just sort of depends on the maturity.
Yeah, so we've had like a real quick war story. Me and another guy on our team, it was a small facility, and they deal with, I think it was like some kind of, I don't know, it was a finance company or something, but it was a branch, and they just wanted to look at these small branches because there were only like maybe 5 workers in these places. Right. And they had a corporate office. But the service offerings that we were providing were remote phishing and on-site social engineering and physical access control bypass. So we combined those efforts. So I worked with the guy that was doing the remote phishing, where he did send an email, and in that email he did say we're going to be sending someone over from corporate because we're going to be rewiring the network. Just going to be testing network connectivity speeds, which, Brent and I use that guys a lot, whether we're plugging in a keylogger or we're plugging in some kind of device, malicious device or an access, a rogue access point or something like that into the network. We use that oftentimes. And so I went over, they received this email. I went to Starbucks. I got a thing of coffee, knocked on the door. I printed off a fake. They didn't even have, I don't think they had corporate badges, but I made it look official. Printed off a fake badge, put it on a lanyard, walked in with some coffee. I was like, hey guys, I know it's early. Sorry to bug you guys, but I brought you coffee, so you're not too mad at me. I'm just going to be testing the network connectivity. And from there, they let me plug in devices. They gave me access to all their systems. One of the offices were locked, and that's where their branch manager was. And the branch manager, fortunately, was out on vacation. And I was like, well, I have to test this too. And so they let me into the branch manager's office and onto their docked laptop that they left there while they were on vacation. And, so that's pretty, I don't know, that's a good way, I guess, because that email did kind of give some credibility. And I think when you're building that rapport a little bit beforehand, but it does definitely, like Brent was saying, it definitely depends on the industry and the building, because you don't want to go into some massive building in a busy downtown, and sending an email that's just going to get combed over, or where the guy that sent the email that you're spoofing is next door to the security guards or something like that, and they're verifying. You don't want to do that. So,
or he's up on the 345th floor, and he's in a meeting, and you have to sit in the lobby for half an hour for them to verify or something like that.
Yeah, all of that adds to like gut check time, doesn't it? Like when you're sitting there saying, "Oh my gosh, did this actually work? Did we actually get through?" Right? How much of that are you just sitting there biting your nails saying, "Did we do it?"
I think it really sort of depends. I know when you're in person and you walk in and say that there's not really a way around encountering the security guard desk, for example. And through our reconnaissance and whatever guise we are, donning at that time, you kind of have that moment before you start the discussion of, okay, what am I supposed to say again? What's my reason? Why am I here? And you just, you kind of have that second of nervousness. And then once you start getting into it and you start delivering your story to that person, however you may need to do it, you sort of just have to fill it out in the moment to see if they're buying it. Because you can tell pretty quick if someone just doesn't even care what you're saying, they're going to let you in anyway, or if they don't care what you're saying because they already, see through it anyway. So it's one of those things where you have to be prepared as much as you can. And if something goes south, then, you prepared the best you can and good on the client. So.
Yeah. As far as testing, like whether or not, I don't know, let's say Brent's out in the car and he's going to be connecting wirelessly to a rogue access point that we drop in. Say we drop some evil access point inside or a Pi with Wi-Fi connectivity. Actually, we have a clipboard that we use. Oftentimes, it's got a Proxmark built into it, but it's also got a Arduino and it's got a wireless NIC in it. So somebody can connect to it wirelessly and then see in real time the harvested badges when I'm bumping into people, or to replay those badges into a door or whatever. So Brent being outside, we often will have our phone ready to text to say, hey, are you able to connect? Are you able to see the rogue access point that I just plugged into their, their conference room where they've got the network wide open, And so yeah, there is a finger biting moment, though, definitely, when you plug in a Dropbox, or did I configure this keylogger right? Did I configure this, if you're using some Hack 5 gadgets, did I configure this LAN turtle or whatever correctly? I don't know, but it's plugged in, whatever. I don't want to just to cop out and just say, it's good because it's a proof of concept when you can take a picture of that plugged into the back of the client's computer that you're not supposed to have access to. Yeah, that's bad in and of itself. But, when you're trying to actually test the network and stuff, you want to verify that connectivity before you leave the building. Unless you
you can't just say, well, if it would have worked, this and this could have happened. You do have certain clients where they say, okay, get in, proof of concept, plugging something in, but please don't exploit anything. Don't actually try to gain access to anything on the network. Just show us if you possibly could. So in those instances, it doesn't really matter if your tools are configured because they don't need to dial out anyway. So, but as Tim was saying, if that's part of the goal to gain access to network, start sending shells back to the external red team, then yeah, you can't just, be all willy-nilly and say, well, I hope it works, and plug it in and leave and, you're texting your guys or calling them, hey, anything yet? And nothing works. And then you're going to have to go back and retrieve the device, maybe try again on a different target if you're able to. So.
Right. Now, let me ask you guys this. What got you into penetration testing? Like what clicked in your head? What made you start? Right? Like what was the aha moment? Like this is something I've got to do for the rest of my life. What sent you down this road? And Tim, I'm going to start with you first, and then we'll go to Brent.
Okay. Well, I think you'll probably find mine and Brent's kind of go together. Brent and I, if you don't know, they grew up together. So we started doing this, we started with some phone phreaking and hacking when we were probably like 16, 17. And I think if you've seen the movie Sneakers, that was a big influence. And then the movie Hackers, of course, when it came out, a great introduction to the culture, if not accurate at all, but technically. But, I think the movie Sneakers really did it for me. And watching like Ferris Bueller's Day Off, that social engineering with that, I was like, man. And so that kind of put that fire in me when I was young. And then I met Brent, and he was really into hacking too. And we're like, hey, let's figure out how to manipulate some stuff. And we did it. And so I think that's always been there kind of as a hobby. But once I started working with like Federal Solutions and doing some security there, and then with state and local government doing some testing, I was like, man, I really want to do pen testing. I want to do kind of a red team thing. Met a guy, he was an auditor. He had a pen tester with him. They interviewed me because I was subbing for the CISO, and they were like, hey, why aren't you doing hacking? And I was like, well, I really haven't been given an opportunity. It was kind of cool because that kind of opened up the door to start with Solutionary, and then now NTT Security and NTT Threat Services and such.
Okay, and Brent, you wanna dive into that question as well?
Yeah, first it's kind of funny to laugh when Tim said he was into the hacking. It's like, oh, I do the hacking. This kind of made me laugh, but just really high level, because you reminded us this is being recorded, but figuring out how to make things do things they weren't supposed to on certain networks, and just having fun with that. At that age when you're young, it was just kind of weird feeling of power, I guess is the way to say it, which sounds weird. But it was fun because it almost seemed like there were no limits, and I love the challenge. It's almost like a puzzle. And so it was fun to sort of figure out, okay, what can I do now? And it all started off, like Tim was saying, with phones. I thought it was really cool that I could figure out a way to call my friends for free. And this was before cell phones, or before I had a cell phone anyway. And all these different fun things. And this is pretty cool. I went and grabbed this out of the closet really quick, but this was actually something that Tim gave me years ago.
Holy cow, that thing's ancient.
Yes.
I haven't seen one of those in for friggin' ever.
Yeah.
I think I was 16 or 17. I gave that to you.
Yeah.
Nice.
So
how would you use it?
Obviously, at 2600 hertz, you would hold it up to the phone, and it would play the sound that quarters make. Old trick. So.
Right.
Putting quarters.
Right, and it was really good for PBX blasting, right?
Yeah, you could do a lot with it.
Yeah, you could also, like, if you only had the headset, you didn't have a tone dial or whatever, you plugged into one of those, the big terminal boxes. You could play the tones, dial the numbers from that just with the audio. So that was kind of handy sometimes if you didn't have a keypad.
Right. Yeah, I had somebody make an offline. By the way, I had somebody make an offline comment to me that social engineering is such a nice way to say manipulation.
Yes, it is. And for me, I'm a very honest guy. I feel like, and I hate confrontation. And so it's kind of this internal struggle with me every time on every assessment where, especially if it's someone that's super nice and they're going out of their way to help you, anytime I get a chance after the assessment, I go back to them and I actually apologize and explain to them what we were doing and use that as a teachable moment for how they could have responded differently. And, but yeah, that's exactly what it is. You are manipulating and you're taking advantage of the basic human need to help others.
Yeah, and I do want to add this, because I don't want there to be bad vibes with social engineering, right? Like, because a lot of times people will say, well, social engineer, you're a professional liar. That's not always the case. It's almost like a performance, right? Because when you're doing your job, you know that you're going in there to help. You're not going in there to be malicious because you're not a malicious actor. You're essentially there as an assessor. And so you're assessing the security awareness, and then you base your acting ability because it's improv. That's what social engineering is for the most part. At least when you're doing face-to-face social engineering or phishing, say you're calling someone. A lot of that is improv. So having those improvisational skills to be able to act like you're with a contractor or act like you're a help desk or act like you're, with corporate or you're an executive. Brent's done this where he's more in a suit. And then I've been the guest contractor. I don't know, say I'm doing a NIST 853 audit and he's there escorting me and we're visiting the other branches. We've used that several times where we're able to I'm doing an audit and people are scared to death of auditors for the most part. And so they're they think that he is representative of, the corporate office. And he's using a good guy, so he's got a fake badge. We'll print off these fake badges. This is just a funny one. Like,
down there. Well, your finger was over the bottom of it. I didn't know if you meant to do that on purpose or not.
I did. Yeah. But
okay, Mr. Anderson.
As soon as like Mr. Robot came out, I started using Elliot Alderson on my badge on purpose just to see if anybody would pick up on it, and people don't. But most of the time, we'll use legitimate names. That way, if they look in their global directory and they look up Brent or something, that name is on there. Rarely do they have a picture associated with it unless they're using some kind of badge printing software with it. But we've used that a lot of times. I ramble a little bit, so if I get
shut up, man.
Somebody shut up.
Shut up. So with your guys, with not only whoever you're pretending to be with acting, but you also have to be able to play off emotional parts of that as well. So if you're going somewhere and you just know that people are looking at you like, I don't recognize that guy. Something seems weird. If you know how to walk with a purpose and you get that stride and that look on your face of, don't bother me, I'm in a hurry, I'm walking with a sense of urgency. You have body language, and if you're acting pissed off because someone's trying to slow you down and you want to make them very uncomfortable by being, a jerk or a bit aggressive, that will make a lot of people back off. But you have to be able to get into that mindset and sell that. Otherwise, people pick up on all sorts of signs. You may not realize how much you pick up from when you're talking to someone, but just their body language, their tone, so many things about them that if something in the least bit is off, then it raises those intuition alarms within that person that's observing you. So you have to know what you're doing. You have to have that confidence and you have to have it together. Again, adding on to my earlier statement that it's not just walking in the front door. There's a whole lot attached to that.
So, all right, cool. We've answered that. Now I've got a couple more questions coming from YouTube, cool. Right? Go ahead.
We love the questions. Bring them in.
So did you join an existing team or did you solo?
I've done some independent work, but no, we're part of a team now. So we're part of NTT has a team that specializes solely in threat simulation. So the threat services team for NTT, there's a team of about, I don't know, I think there's maybe between 12 and 15 of us. I can't think right off, but usually it's within that range. And in that team, everybody's a generalist, but we have subject matter experts, or SMEs, that we call them. And so Brent and I we're the subject matter experts on that team for covert physical and social engineering.
Right. And when you started, were you part of a team, or did you solo when you started out?
When I started pen testing, it was solo, sort of. It was more solo, like where I would have people ask me to do the assessments.
Right.
And then when I started at Solutionary, it was done through Solutionary, through their team.
Okay.
Yep.
And Brent, solo.
Same answer.
Solo. So you started solo and then went into it?
Yeah, I started solo and then joined a team.
Okay. The next question that we have is, if you're looking for new staff, what skill sets or backgrounds are you looking for? Like, would street activism be a skill set that you're looking for, right? And I think that goes towards creating a diversion, right? But what skill sets and backgrounds are you looking for people that would potentially come and work with you?
So is this for like all assessment types, or strictly like red teaming, physical, social engineering?
I would think it would be red team physical.
Okay.
So yeah, go ahead, Tim.
For physical, the skill sets that you want, of course, again, like what Brent was saying, if we were to hire somebody, like say on our team, we wouldn't look at, okay, well, you're really good at social engineering, you're good at, I don't know, you're a parkour expert, and you've finished all of, I don't know, like the Red Team Alliance trainings and stuff like that. That's great and that's awesome. That's stuff that would help you become a subject matter expert. But what we look at is that general experience first. That you do have experience doing pen testing. You know what it means, what happens. You know some steps and methodologies. So having a pen testing methodology background is at least understanding the approach for networking is important. But for the physical, the skill sets, the baseline is that you have at least a basic understanding of lock picking, basic understanding of bypassing, typical locks that you come across, whether they're padlocks or the actual doors, bypassing electronic access control, like two-factor authentication. How would I bypass that? If you have a solid understanding of some of those basics, in addition to, and I think this is the most important thing that I often tell people, is improvisational skills. Being able to talk on the fly, being able to think very quickly, and to fill in those blanks and those white spaces. Because what happens a lot of times is when we get caught, or if we're talking to someone, or that we approach the security guard, or security guard approaches you, you have to think on the fly. And that is, I think, the most important thing for somebody that does these kinds of covert assessments. Is being able to do that. And I always advise people after our talks, when we get asked questions similar to that, is, if you have access to it, try to take an acting class, try to take an improv class, a community class or something like that. Mess around, even like when you go outside, be somebody different. When you check out, be somebody different. When you go to the restaurant, be somebody different. And be able to sell that and add on to, okay, well, I'm Joe the farmer or whatever, and I own a crop down the street. Being able to fill in those blanks, but only have a skeleton and then flesh it out as you go as an exercise. It's always handy.
Right, and I would think that empathy and getting a natural feel for the way people think, move, act, and do would also really play into this, wouldn't it?
Oh yeah, big time.
Right. So
yep.
let's I've as I'm listening to you guys, I keep thinking to myself, somebody should really start up like a hacker improv class, right? Like a red team improv class made of just hackers, right? And
you heard it here first.
Yep.
That's actually something we're trying to do. Yeah, Brent and I have been talking about that because we put together some trainings that we're going to do, and one of the things that we want to focus on is that improvisational stuff, because there are some fantastic training. I did mention like Red Team Alliance because there's good friends of ours. They have some awesome training for the actual tools and techniques. And then, they go over some improvisational stuff, but Brent and I definitely thought about doing some, improvisational workshops and stuff with our talks. Because some of our talks, we'll even do that a little bit. We'll do a little exercise and pick somebody from the audience. I think we did that at St. Con a few years ago, and it went over pretty well.
Dude, I swear that I smell a future Twitch stream going on. Okay? Okay?
Yeah, we've been sort of brainstorming how that's going to look.
Right.
We have a lot of ideas. So.
Right.
Again, you're hurting. So.
Well, if you guys need help, definitely reach out. I'm here. Now, one of the things that I know Josh and I have an extremely hard time dealing with, and I want to throw it at you guys, right? And pick your brains on this, right? There is no real definition of what a penetration test is. Fight me.
Okay.
So, let's tackle
Brent,
this.
I'm going to
Go for it.
A vulnerability scan is not a penetration test.
Yes.
I just want to start off with that. With that change my mind meme, don't even try because there's, you can't. That's not a thing.
Man,
so
we have companies out there that are literally selling penetration tests for $7 an IP, right? And we call them pen test sweatshops. I don't know what you guys call them, but that's what we call them because you don't get the value, right? It's maybe a Nmap scan or a Nessus scan with the serials barely filed off, right? And it doesn't matter like if it has one website or a million websites, right? So if you can help me understand what an actual penetration test is, right? And the guys who put together PTES are some of the best in the industry, right?
So I think from what I've seen, scoping a pen test, just scoping different assessments has always been a bit of a challenge, no matter what company you work with, no matter what industry you're looking at. So
dude, asset discovery for a company is like so difficult, and it's one of the basics.
Yes.
Go ahead.
I can't actually think of one company that we have assessed through my entire career that, let's say you're doing an external assessment against them and they say, here's a complete list of everything that we own online. They don't know everything they own. They lose track. They don't document properly. So see, that's an issue. Another issue with that is if you're selling it by IP or say like, we'll do, 200 IPs. Well, what if they have 20,000 hosts in the network? Or another issue that we've had in the past, which we've managed to get away from this with our clients, is they'll say, hey, come in and here are the ranges, but the domain controller is in that range and it's out of scope. Why?
It's like if you're asking me to come in and do a test, everything that is connected to is in scope. Don't tell me what is or what is not, not in scope, right?
Yeah, I think that goes back to that checkbox security mentality too, right? Because a lot of times, they're just trying to do it to meet PCI or they're trying to meet some kind of compliance standards. And so they just want the minimum thing. It's not going to disrupt production. And I think as a client, they're always worried about that. There's always a concern. We're bringing these ethical hackers in. They're coming in and they're going to mess everything up. And that's not the case. I think it's always important to sit with your client and to discuss, what are your goals? What are your greatest risks? What are your most sensitive systems? What don't you want? What's the worst possible thing that could happen? And then from there, building out that pen test and say, here's our methodologies. Here's the service offerings that we have that can meet what your needs are, but also give you a pretty solid understanding of where you stand as far as the security architecture, or your security awareness or how you're implementing it.
Now, I'm going to put both of you in the hot seat real quick because that got away from the question of can you define a pen test, right? That got into scoping, and I'm sorry, I'm going to give you a challenge here. That got into scoping and like bits, and P-Test does, right, talk about the naughty bits of penetration testing, if you will, right? But what is the definition for you guys of a pen test? Like, define it for me, right? And we started out with vulnerability scan is not a pen test. That's great, right? But that's only one little piece of it, right? What's the bigger picture? Can you tease that out?
I think the bigger picture for me is that you have a goal, whether it's getting domain admin or whatever, and that you attempt to reach that goal through realistic, real-world attack vectors on the network. So whether that's running some vulnerability scans and going through and validating every finding that you have, or running burp against a web application and then validating that stuff, not just saying, hey, here's some canned verbiage for cross-site scripting. You guys have it. I made an alert pop up. Here you go. Not that cross-site scripting is a big deal anymore, really, but things like that. But being able to push beyond it and actually try to compromise. So I think a pen test is an effort to safely compromise a network, a web application, or a data center. Not just say, here's a theoretical exploit that might happen because it looks like you're vulnerable here. Being able to actually compromise it, I think, is what defines pen test.
Brent, any addition?
No, I mean, obviously we've talked about this a lot. So you said it, we both were like, rah. So that's the consensus there.
Yeah. So it's sort of like a controlled burn, if you will, right? It's a controlled intrusion into an environment, right?
Yes.
Okay.
I think that's probably a pretty simple way to put it. Because if you take it even further than that with the control, and you look at something like a purple team, where you have the red team saying, hey, we did this. Did you see it? And the blue team says, no. So they tune, you try it again. If you go in there and you're just blasting and, clicking Hail Mary on Armitage, however you want to say it, and just blasting it, and you're like, oh, I got a shell. And they say, well, how'd you do it? And you're like, well, I'm not really sure. Check your log or whatever. What good is that going to do for the client to know how to remediate that issue or what the issue even is? And I know that's a really extreme example, but if you can control it more and you can be precise and say, we are going to go after this certain attack vector,
right,
and then you can help the client during that time, it's beneficial for both sides. And that's the point. The point isn't to go in there and tell some system admins that this network, like, hey, you have an ugly baby and you guys suck. It's to help them strengthen their network. That's the whole reason we're here. So
and not to,
go ahead, Tim.
And not real quick, and not because I see this too much. Because if we ask for like the pen test report, the results from before or something, say we get a new client, I've seen stacks of reports that are literal canned verbiage from I don't know, Acunetics or from Nessus or Burp, where they have copy and pasted, their remediation, the finding. They just put that verbiage in there, and then they take out, well, Nessus found blah blah blah. Instead, it's ABC company found blah blah blah, and then it's exactly verbatim what was in the scan. So I think avoiding that is the biggest thing. Even with the physical access control stuff, if you're wanting your physical access controls tested and you want to see if they work, don't just tailgate. Okay, well, I tailgated. Well, yeah, that's a finding. Security awareness sucks. They didn't challenge you.
Right.
But that's not what you're testing. If you want to test, that, yeah. But you also want to test, can I bypass this when nobody's around? Or how can I see if this control is actually working? It's the same on a network. Can I see that your IPS is actually picking this stuff up and actively shunning? Or, are we doing kind of a white box? And if so, then what are you guys seeing?
Right. Now, I want to move on here because we have a couple of questions that I definitely want to get some attention on. The first one is, what is the future of physical assessments in these uncertain COVID-19 times and moving forward?
Great question.
Wow.
Yeah. So I think, obviously, this might be sort of shallow-minded. Obviously with social distancing and things like that, I think that will take a while before it dissolves, if it ever does. As an attacker, wearing a mask, a face covering, if you were to walk into a bank branch before this with a mask on, then everyone's freaking out. Silent alarms are getting pushed. Now
it's the only time where we've been told to walk into a bank with a face mask. I mean, it's fun.
So you have certain areas that you go into where they say, you're not allowed to, no hoods, no hats. They want to see your face, facial recognition, all of that stuff. But now you're able to cover that however you need to for safety. It actually kind of gives attackers leverage at this point. Now, to caveat that, I know a lot of places are running a bit more thin with employees. So if strength in numbers helps you out, meaning that you can sneak around a bit more because there's a lot more going on around you, now you're looking at a situation where there's a lot less people, so you have more likelihood of standing out or being noticed. That could be a potential issue. But for pen testers, that just is going to require a bit more homework, a bit more reconnaissance,
right,
before you make your move.
Right, and we're going to get into I've got a reconnaissance question queued up here, right? So we're going to get into that in a second, right? The next one is, how is penetration testing different from red teaming?
Tim, you want to take this one?
Well, I mean, it's really not. I mean, penetration testing is a part of red teaming. Red teaming is a type of pen test for the most part. It's a type where you're trying to gain access to this facility and get access to sensitive data however you can, or they're wanting because red teaming is also subjective, right? Mm-hmm. People will define red teaming differently depending on the tester or the company or the client. Even we've had clients think that they know what a red team is, and it may challenge what our red team methodology is. But for us, it's a larger scope. It's a longer span too, because like a common pen test, for example, if Brett and I are just doing a covert physical security assessment, oftentimes that is just a week pen testing. So we get there and we have a week to get access to that facility, get what we need, and do the reconnaissance prior to it, and then bug out. Whereas if you're doing a red team, it's usually a longer engagement where you're trying to do more of that kind of prolonged, advanced, persistent threat kind of testing.
So you're saying there's like a big difference between the smash and grab versus the advanced phishing technique, as Mr. Street likes to put it.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
Cool. And it's interesting because I think what you just said, Tim, dovetails really well into the next question. And oh God, is it a doozy? All right. I hope you guys are ready for this, right? So I'm gonna clear my throat for this one. Is attempting to see how deep a weaponized attack in the scoped assets, to see how deep an attacker could penetrate the existing compensating security controls, like testing armor before battle, right? Would you say that those activities that you're talking about really fall under that?
Yeah, I would agree. So, hopefully I understood the question correctly. If we're going in and we exploit something, we gain a foothold on that network on a host, then, we do things for privilege escalation where we can become, the admin, then we can jump into AD and eventually, get domain admin and see what we can take over at that point. Then we'll keep digging. It depends on what the goal is. If the goal is to get into the CDE, try to get cardholder data, or maybe it's proprietary research and information that we've got to get into. We're going to see how deep we can go until we can meet those goals.
Right.
And if we meet those goals early, then we will attempt to meet that same goal in different ways, just so we can give the client a broader understanding of potential issues.
So when you're stepping into an engagement, like, how sure are you that the stuff that you have laid out is going to work? Are you able to take let's say you're doing a web assessment, right? Are you able to take something beforehand and being able to test your tools, your techniques, so that way when the client says go, you're getting in? Or if you are pivoting inside of a client's network, are they allowing you to take a subset of VMs and stand up a test environment? Like how do you know that your techniques and your tools are going to work effectively every single time?
Well, I think, because we use industry standard tools, and, we also have some in-house tools that we use, but I think having the standards, that's why they're there. They're standards because they're pretty consistent. Even like for, I don't know, for web applications, for example, you mentioned that, testing like OWASP, for example, some of their controls, or what are some of the common vulnerabilities for now. And so like with physical security, even, I think, you mentioned the armor thing. I think that's a good analogy. You don't want a piece of armor or Kevlar vest that you're giving somebody. Oh, it's made of Kevlar. It's ballistic. It's enforced. You'll be able to shoot, whatever through this. Nothing will get through it. Sweet. Have you guys tested it? No, I just made it today, but trust me, knocks on it. Okay, cool. That's like doing a port scan and saying, okay, well, I did a port scan. Here's some ports you got open. Or did you try to connect to them? Did you try to exploit them?
Right.
Did you test all credentials are there, or did you see what version that they're running and try to see if there's any known vulnerabilities out there to try to actually exploit that? And I think it's the same thing as, going up and knocking on a ballistics vest and saying it's good to go versus actually, shooting a gun at it and seeing if that's going to protect whoever's wearing it.
Right.
The same thing for you.
And adding to that too, no, we can't guarantee every single time something that has worked before will work. So a great example, many environments that we've tested before, MS-17010, being able to exploit that, unauthenticated, was a gold mine. The same thing with LLMNR poisoning, gold mine, for getting credit.
Your words ran together. Do me a favor, be kind and rewind and say that again.
Running response. There you go.
So before, like a very popular attack, MS-17010 was, it's still find it, but it's not near as popular. And if you think you found it, a lot of places have patched it. Or LLMNR poisoning, that used to be a super easy, great way to get creds, but a more mature environment, you're not going to see those anymore. So they used to work. We could pretty much guarantee, hey, we're going to get in there and get creds this way. But we can't guarantee that anymore because, things change. It's a constant cat and mouse game.
Right.
Vulnerabilities come out. We get exploits. We try those exploits. People wise up to it. They patch. Doesn't work. Move on to the next one. So.
Right. Now, for those of you who are watching either on YouTube, on Facebook, here in the Zoom, or on Twitter, or wherever, please, by all means, come up with questions, because these guys are definitely donating their time to fielding anything that you can possibly think of within reason about the topic. Let's be honest. Okay. So with penetration testing and red teaming and physical access, right? I know that I've been privy to some stories, some pretty wild stories about how this happened, right? Stories from, Johnny Long's presentation about putting a coat hanger through the door, waving it around and hearing ka-chunk, right? To somebody telling me about a car dealership that they had to go through the roof and do all this James Bond spy stuff. And what is, and Brent, I'm going to throw this to you first. What is the craziest story that you have about physical testing that you can talk about? Let's remember, this is recorded, right? And did you get the outcome that you thought you would when you were done?
I've got to see. This is one of those questions where you have to be careful not to divulge too much information.
How about the security guard?
Which one?
The security control room, like the.
Oh, okay. So that's a really good one. So Tim and I had a really good dual effort together on this one. As mentioned earlier, he was a contractor. I was in a suit. I was the CEO type, and we have a talk that's called Security Guards LOL, where we pinpoint the whole issue of these entire huge, big corporate buildings put the entire basically physical incident response on one or two security guards. And so when we see that, instead of avoiding security guards, we will actually go straight to the security guards, and we will, use social engineering tactics and basically get them to give us keys to the kingdom. I can't really think of a time that hasn't worked for us. We've been pretty fortunate with that.
Man,
but
I've done physical security, and like I know I've been phished in the past, right? So nobody's impervious to this, right?
Right.
Go on. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to stop you.
No, you're fine. So we went up. I'm trying to say long story short, but there's so much that happened during this one. Tim convinced this guard to swap keys because we were doing inventory on the key inventory. So he said, okay, just to make sure I'm going to bring him back, here are my keys. And it was this big key ring of bump keys. And so she trades it. We now have the keys to the kingdom. Was that before or after you were back behind the desk cloning all the visitor badges?
That was after. So we came up there, and I was an auditor, and Brennan established this rapport as the kind of executive type. And we're making jokes, talking with her. I think she had like a picture of her kid. We're, trying to establish this kind of connection, like you said, this empathetic attempt at connecting. And then we're joking. And then I get behind the table. She lets me behind the table because Brent is like, hey, I'm doing badge inventory, so I need to also see how you guys handle your badges. So let's say an employee forgets. I'm acting like an auditor. Let's say an employee forgets their badge at home. What are your processes? Can you kind of walk me through that? Oh, blah, 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 blah. Oh, okay. Well, do you have any active badges that you provide to the employee, or do you activate a badge as they come up? Oh, well, we have this binder full of active badges. Boom. Binder full of active badges. How many are in there?
It was a huge 3-ring binder. They used the thing that hold baseball cards that you collect. It was full of those, like just badge after badge in those things. It was awesome.
And so I had that clipboard with the Proxmart built into it. And Brent's like, well, this is probably going to take you a little while. And I'm like, yeah. He's like, well, John, if you want to get behind there, is it okay if he sits back there? And she's like, oh, yeah. And then Brent's talking to the maintenance person about something else. And I'm back there, and I just set my clipboard down, and I just go through flipping. And, and I don't know, I probably pulled 50 badges from that, active badges that we were later able to replicate our clone. And so from there, that's when what Brent was talking about had happened. Like, we're like, well, we also need to do some hard key inventory, and we noticed there's a security control room downstairs. We spoke with the maintenance guy. He gave me the wrong keys, and I'm dangling some, I had a ring of bump keys. I don't use bump keys because, they're messy and loud and they scratch stuff. But I had a thing of keys and elevator keys with me, I think. And I had said, hey, he gave me some wrong keys. But he said that I could borrow yours and I'll bring them right back. And she was like, I was like, promise. Actually, here, how about I leave these keys with you so I'll come back. She's like, all right, well, you just make sure you come back before 5 o'clock because I have to lock up the building. I'm like, all right, cool. Gave me the keys. Brent and I were able to use those keys to get access to anywhere we wanted to for the most part. And then once we got inside of the security control room, Brent, I'll let you tell this about the vehicles and the security guard.
Yeah, so this key ring that she gave us was probably about 1.5 inches, and it was full of keys. And so we weren't really sure, obviously, which one went to this. So Tim had the key ring, and we were standing there, and the security access control room had a glass window in it. And so the light was off. We could see no one was in there. So Tim's going through these keys, and as soon as a security guard came around the corner, like at the far end of the hallway, Tim gets the right key and opens the door. It was like Hollywood movie timing. Craziest thing. I thought the guy saw us. I thought he saw us duck in there. And so we get in there and close the door, and there's a desk that's facing the window. So you can, if you're sitting at the desk, you're looking out through the glass window. So we both like huddle together and hide under this desk because I was sure
you
guys
had a bromance under the desk. Is that what you're saying?
We talked about future plans and anyway, I was so sure that this security guard saw us. So I just, in my head, I imagine him saying, okay, that's weird. And now he's like booking it down there to say, what are you guys doing? So anyway, as I'm imagining this guy coming after us and waiting for the door to open, I looked at Tim. I was like, well, okay, if this guy comes in here, what do we say? And Tim's like, surprise. So luckily he never came. I think we got away with that one for sure. We ended up picking the wafer lock on the key box, and it had all the keys for like the company vehicles, everything. And so that was a fun time.
What was really cool about that assessment too is that in that key box, so it's aluminum key box that you see, and it had a generic wafer lock on it. So we popped that open really quick, and we had another data center that we were supposed to do an assessment for later on in that week, and it was labeled on there. It was like 123 data center on a key ring, and it had the key on there, and I was like, holy crap. Let's take some pictures of this. So we took a bunch of pictures. There's some apps out there that will do this now, and there's impressioning kits that you can buy and stuff.
Right.
But at the time, we didn't.
Did you use those? But go on.
We didn't have that at the time, but we did take several pictures, and then we kind of pressed it down. I forgot what we had, and we pressed it down on that, and we were able to actually go to a hardware store afterwards, and we were able to file a key and kind of guess the depth. And file a key that actually worked when we visited that 123 data facility
Nice.
and able to do that. So that was kind of cool.
Yeah. Drew Culbertson, he's on our team. He's super good at this stuff too. He was a big part in that key duplication with Tim. So
right. Anytime you try to do that from a picture, oh man, that's just straight up. Mad props, because I don't care who you are. That is just straight up difficult to get done.
I only know a few people that can eye a certain key and know the bidding of the key. Drew Porter of Red Mesa Security is one of those dudes.
Right. Question for you, going along this same topic, do you ever go back to the same places and get access a second time? And then we've got one looking into the future. So let's go with this one first. Do you go back to the same place and get access a second time? Go.
Yes. And more. Yes, and more.
And more. Okay, go on with and more. Follow that.
We, one of the things we'll do is, we'll go in and we'll be sneaky. We'll do what we can. If no one's paying attention, which in most cases no one cares, so you have to up the ridiculousness.
Right.
So we will try it again, being even more noisy, and we will keep doing this because we want to give the client, we want to give them a chance to catch us so that we can say, hey, good job. We don't want the reports to be all negative, like all doom and gloom. We also make it a point to find things to praise them about too. And so, we do get access over and over to some places, whether it's, again, trying to test their response, trying to catch us, or if it's an assessment where we are actually maintaining or we're weakening a building, and so maybe we weaken a magnetic lock or something like that, so we can keep going out of the back door. So yeah, we do.
Okay, so
and real quick,
go ahead, Tim.
To add on to that too, like annually. So say you have a client that does an annual test like this. We've had clients where we'll switch out where it's not just Brent and I at the same time. It'll be like Drew, or there's another guy on our team that does some physical stuff. So we'll try to switch that out, or we'll change the way we look. Pretty drastically as far as growing a big beard or hair or something, to have a pretty legitimate disguise so that people don't remember you from the year before, or, try to space that out so you're not always the same person going every year.
Right. So, keeping along those same things, just real quick, this is a personal question. Without going into detail, talking about disguises. Okay, what is the best or most used disguise that you guys have done? Because I could totally see Tim Roberts trying to get into a place in a T-Rex outfit, and Brent, I could see you in like this big, huge banana from Peanut Butter Jelly Time, right? Trying to get into place. I mean, I could totally see this. I don't know why, right? So, what have you guys
that's more,
used as
I think that's more Jason Street.
Man,
Jason wears his PJs, and he's gotten into places like his minion PJ bottoms. So,
like, don't talk to the crazy guy in his pajamas.
Well, that all goes back to what you guys were talking about with the demeanor, the way that you're moving, the way that you're carrying yourself, right? And really portraying what you want another person to see, right? And that goes a lot towards the shtick of being able to throw somebody off their game and then read what they're telling you, right?
Yeah. You have to pick something, and this is one of the things that we talk about in our training too. You have to pick something that actually makes sense. Mm-hmm. So let's say if I were to go and say like, I'm the world slam dunk champion and I'm here because, whatever reason. No, I'm not. I'm 5'4", unless everyone's going to know if I'm the world slam dunk champion because that's amazing.
Again, you in a big banana.
Yeah, so you have to get something that actually makes sense and you can actually sell. Right. So and you really have to sort of kind of know yourself, your personality, the way you act, the way you talk. Obviously, you can have a few different things that you can do. You can have the very lax, pissed off, very rough construction guy, or you could have the more polished C-level, corporate environment guy. So just things that and something else too is if you are going to put a guy on for whatever industry the client is that you're trying to gain access to,
right,
make sure that you can talk shop. If it's a graphic design, something or other, or a law firm or whatever, know about those things before you show up.
Right.
Because if somebody says something to you and it's an industry term and you get the stupid look on your face, that's going to throw up some flags. So
yeah, and one of the things like with the guy says, I can give a real quick war story. Did an assessment, had an old coworker. He was going to do the on-site, and I was the kind of the project manager. So I put together this fake letter from the building, the people that leased the building to this company. So it was the building manager. Had wrote out that they were replacing the sprinkler heads in the building. So this building had several different clients in it, but we're just assessing one, right? So he has this letter, and he dresses up as a maintenance worker. So he has to kind of it's funny because he's a very clean cut guy, and I was like, dude, not that all maintenance workers can't be clean cut because they can, there's different, looks. But you can't just buy a flannel shirt that you just bought from Target and then walk right in there with your crisp flannel shirt. It's got to look worn, and you got to get a tool belt. You got to get all this stuff, and
you have to weather. You have to weather the stuff.
Yeah. So he grabbed a ladder, and I was like, put some paint on that ladder and stuff. And he's like, "Oh, I won't be able to return the ladder." He's like, "It's all right. We'll try to expense it." So he gets the ladder and dirties it up and all that stuff. And it helped, with him, but it was pretty funny with him doing that. But he was able to get access into the facility. Was pretending to switch out a sprinkler head, but he was installing a wireless router, like an AP that we had set up with a custom firmware. He put that in the ceiling, the drop ceiling, and it was funny because somebody had called him. They were like, "Hey, what are you doing?" He's like, "Oh, doing this." He's like, "Who are you with?" "I'm with whatever building management." Right. They're like, "Oh, do you have some credentials?" Gives them the letter. They look at the letter. They're like, "Oh, okay, cool." Give it to them. Another person walks by, asks questions. They see that other guy. They're like, "Oh, well, we need to make sure. We need to call and confirm. Can you come on down?" He's like, and he'd already installed it. He's like, "Oh, yeah, sure." he goes to the lobby with them, and they call the actual building manager, and the building manager's like, no, I didn't send my guy over there. Who is this guy? Let me talk to him. And so he gets on the phone, and he's like pretending, and he's like, yeah, no, I got it, boss. Yeah, it must have been just some cross wires. I didn't know I wasn't supposed to be here today. I thought I was supposed to be here, or I thought I was supposed to be here today. I didn't know it's tomorrow or next week. No, it's all taken care of. And the guy's yelling in the background. He ends up hanging the phone up on this guy. He's like, yeah, it's good to go. We're like, okay, cool. And the phone starts ringing again, but he's already out the door. So, but that helped. And it was a funny war story there too. But
nice.
Yeah, that helped.
Now, I know that we're over time. I've got a couple more questions that they look like they would be real good ones. Are you guys able to stick around for a little bit? And we'll finish these questions out, Okay, so the first one that I have for you guys is, can you share some of the new attack tactics that work on mature AD environments?
Trying to think of, you do it so much, I'm trying to think of some more modern ones. You have your old, Kerberosi, you've got some of the stuff we mentioned earlier. Honestly, there's really not a whole lot that's been released like in the last month or so that is like game changing, other than some more some exploits to gain footholds. So you have cloud testing, cloud environments, things like that. So,
all right. The next is, what is the weakest point of entry in most companies you have tested, and give one example?
For physical, people, because people are almost always the weakest layer. That human firewall, you hear that sometimes. I think we actually have a talk entitled that from a few years back. Being that human firewall. But most of the time, it's people letting us. Like, there was a time where Brent and I were trying to get through a door. It had a two-factor authentication. It was a retinal scanner, and I think it had a badge, and it may even had a pin on it too. It might have been three-factor. I don't know. But we're like, man, how are we going to get through that? We didn't bring any tools or anything to do that, and there's nothing that we can bypass physically because they have this blocked off, and we're sitting thinking about it, and there's this guy that walks right through it. So I just follow behind. I pretend to do the retinal scan. He's like, man, you don't have to do that. We're like, what? He goes, oh, yeah, they don't have those plugged up. We only have the badge in right now. I'm like, oh, sweet. And so we just pretend to badge in and follow behind him. And there was no question. And so that's like most of the time when we get in, we don't have to do any kind of James Bond stuff. We don't have to install these little gadgets or anything like that and steal badges. We just follow people in. At first, that's usually how we first get in.
God, the shoulder surf is just so powerful.
Oh yes.
I mean, I've been in highly classified environments where if you shoulder surf somebody in front of you and you don't swipe your badge at the door, you're fired on the spot.
Yep. I've gotten into a few places like that, and I was actually surprised. There was one at the entrance was right out. It was like an elevator vestibule. So when you exit the elevator, it's pretty common that you have to badge in once you are on that floor. So it was about 20 minutes or so that I was standing outside of this elevator. I was on the phone talking to my wife. I had my bag. I was wearing a suit. And 20 minutes, I thought for sure someone would come out and say, hey, man, are you waiting on somebody? Are you lost? Can we help you with something? But no one did. And after watching people go through, because it was a very secure area. So after watching several people go in, it was the culture where they would badge, open the door, turn around and close the door, make sure it was closed. And the other person would badge, take their turns. Like it's supposed to be done. They were actually doing that.
Right.
So I waited, and I could tell this person by the way they walked and just their demeanor that they didn't really care. And so I took a chance, and it worked out just fine that she actually held the door open for me. And it didn't go over very well. She didn't get fired, but it wasn't pretty from what I heard. So.
Right. Okay, so how do you convey to these clients the risk of improperly implemented controls that would allow for you to penetrate the environment across different assessments?
So one of the things that we do is, we try to compare this to something that's real world. So we'll start off with the case of physical. If someone can walk in through the front door and grab a bunch of laptops, or can go into your server room and plug something in, that's a breach. That's data loss. That sucks for anybody. Then if you look at, okay, if you are phished and now you have malware on your network and all this data is being exfilled, things like that, that's not good for anybody. So basically what we do is we take what we are doing and we mesh it with real examples, and we try our hardest to show them why it would suck for them if this stuff were to happen.
Okay. Tim?
Could you repeat the question, Brent? Kind of zoned out when Brent was talking.
Yeah. Let's see here. How do you convey to these clients the risk of improperly implemented controls that would allow you to penetrate the environment across different assessments?
Okay, let's say
across.
Yeah, it's reporting, right? I think a good report, having a solid report with solid evidence, is great. Across different types of pen tests, let's say I'm doing an external penetration assessment and there's a lot of web applications on that.
Mm-hmm.
I may not dive deep into the application layer, but I'm still going to show some of that. And in the report, I'm going to recommend that they do an application penetration assessment on those applications, especially if it seems like there's tons of vulnerabilities out there. They're running an outdated Apache server,
right?
And they're running, they haven't, the developers aren't following, good practice. So I think something like that always good. Just reporting, solid reporting.
Right. Now, I've got two more questions, and then we're done. Okay, so we've almost made it through. Right, we're getting there. So question number one: of all of the times you've social engineered someone, which do you feel most guilty about?
Oh, I can. Oh gosh,
here we go.
The knitting lady. Come on, you got to talk about that.
I know. I have some really good ones. I'm trying to think of which one to pick. I'll just do it this way. They both were older women who were extremely helpful and very trusting.
Right.
And they, and in both cases, they would have pictures on their desk. One was like of their granddaughter who played soccer. And so we started talking about that. My daughter at the time was playing soccer. So, we established some rapport and we were talking about these things, which led to her going out of her way to help us. In another case, there was a lady that she was a receptionist, and I actually created a bit of a hectic, stressful diversion so that Tim and Drew Culbertson could just walk in behind me.
Walk right back.
And as she was trying to get their attention, I escalated my situation to distract her. And she was really getting stressed out, and I was doing that on purpose so that they could get by.
Right.
And so those are the two where they totally went out of their way to help, and I stressed them out. But I was able to go back afterwards and apologize and talk to them what was going on and make things right. So, but at the time, it's like lying to your grandma or something, like trying to pull one over on your grandma. I don't know. It's probably a bad way to explain it, but for me, those are the two that stood out.
Right. Actually, now, I've got a +1 for you, right? And the +1 is, was there a notification for these two, right? These two specific instances, was there a notification corporate-wide that a test was going to be conducted?
No.
No, you never want that to happen. Okay. Like if you're doing a black box or partial disclosure kind of assessment, you never want the whole corporation to know. You're going to blow your cover instantly, right. And that prep people, it's like prepping people to do it so you get a better score or something. It's silly.
Okay. And then, go ahead.
I was saying you just shoot yourself in the foot as a client when you do that. So,
okay, so let's get into the very last question, and I think this one is, kind of a cornerstone question for a lot of what's going on. Come on, there we go. XSplit, thank you. Does gender make a difference in social engineering?
yes.
I would say so. Mainly because, and I don't want to get into this too much, but in our industry, in the IT industry, you see a lot of male dominant people, but like we've had this was years ago, Solutionary. We had a lady. She was awesome at social engineering. She was incredible at it, and she walked in and she was able to. I think she pretended she was pregnant, and then she was going into labor, and then this was like. Her and another guy were able to get through so much stuff utilizing that. But also, I think there's almost a natural thing where there'll be a lot of people trying to hold the door open, and things like that, which is admirable. But there's kind of I think it's a habit that a lot of people have that they will do. They will open up the door or whatever. And I think also even for the elderly, sometimes we. Instinctively almost sometimes, especially at least in Kentucky and Tennessee, hold the door open. It's the kind thing to do, and I think that there's a benefit there because even when I used to do asset protection, and surprisingly, people that stole the most, like some high end items, were elderly, like kind of your grandma types, because they were to be the sweet grandma and. People would help them out, and they're sitting there sliding these $300 pieces of jewelry in their bags and stuff. And I would review the camera, and I'd be like, "Look at this!" And that was pretty consistent. But they were able to get away with more sometimes. I don't think it's all the time, but I do think that people are more inclined to help a female than they are a male.
Yeah, and if you look historically too, if you look at traditional spy tactics, whether it's Cold War era or even modern day spy tactics, it's not an uncommon thing to employ, a specific gender for specific targets for manipulation, especially if it's a female targeting a male. They have certain things that they can leverage easier than a male over a female. So even if you look at it from that point of view, then it absolutely makes a difference. Some environments, some places, I would say it doesn't, but I would say in most cases it can provide a bit of an edge. Not saying females always have an edge over males in social engineering. There are cases where it's the other way around, but you have to do your homework and figure it out.
Right. And I've heard stories of people going to the local strip club and, hiring some of the workers there to go out and get in. Is that something that you guys have heard? I mean, Tim, I see the grimace. Go ahead.
No, I think that kind of gets ethically a little bit wrong. We would never do something like that. Right. Because they don't have a non-disclosure agreement. You don't know what they're providing to them, right? And you don't bring in some third party into an engagement that is an agreement between your client.
Right.
I think that's a breach. I think, in my opinion, it's just something I would never have any of my guys do or anybody. I know on mine and Brent's team, like something that we would never do.
Yeah. Now I could see if you aren't bound by legal limitations and scoping and things like that because you are actually participating in illegal activities, then yeah, I mean, people do that stuff all the time.
Right.
So it does happen, but we don't employ those techniques.
It just there's a big line there, or a fine line that I just would not want to get into. I mean, I can see it could be leveraged. You could pay some guy, to bump into somebody to distract them or whatever. If you want to do that, that's fine. But now there's just too much legal potential ramifications.
So is there anything that you guys wanted to talk about that we didn't get a chance to discuss?
Yeah, we could talk about this stuff for weeks. I think probably specific questions are good. Otherwise, we could just go and go.
Right now,
I kind of want to add on to the last point about not employing people that aren't actually employees. Like the stripper example you gave.
Right.
There could be times, specific times where, let's say, if you are needing to perform surveillance against a target area, but across the street or somewhere where you actually have a good vantage point is, let's say that area is being inhabited by someone, whether it's an apartment or a house or something. I have heard of people that would go up to that house and say, "Hey, here's $200 cash. Do you mind if I take a few pictures out of your window for a little bit?" Right. Or do you mind if I go in your backyard and take pictures of some birds or whatever? Here's a few $100. And they don't know what you're doing, but you're able to sort of pay that person off for a certain vantage point. Again, that's not very common, and that's probably used more by certain agencies and things like that, a bit deeper than what we would necessarily get into, but that is a tactic that's used.
All right. Well, with that being said, Brent, Tim, thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for everybody who's logged into the live stream, who's been watching us on Zoom. I hope that you've found a lot of the information very helpful, very useful. And at the end of the day, I hope that you found out who's your hacker.